Good morning and good Yontif. Ayin Beis, volume 3, on page 1272. Aleph Ayin Beis. To sum up what we learned yesterday, that according to the above, the questions that were asked back on page 1212 is only stronger, the question. Why is there indeed no reward in this world? Reward for a mitzvah in this world. Since a mitzvah that comes with intention and ru'usa deliba, which means an inner desire, an inner passion, causes and generates now also, right now, it generates an energy in Gan Eden. The Neshama is benefiting from it. So why is there no schar? Why do we say there's no schar until the future? That schar is right now being generated as we speak. And also the pasuk says specifically, so that's a logical question. The pasuk says the verses are filled with references that through a mitzvah you get reward in this world. In telechu. And the reason for it is understood because, as we learned earlier, that the mitzvah, what it does is it transcends and goes beyond the tzimtzumim, the regular structure and hierarchy of existence, where something is concealed in a lower world and revealed in a higher world. That hierarchy, through mitzvahs, which reaches pnimius ha'er, not chetzenius ha'er, you don't have this hierarchy, this distinction. And through simcha shel mitzvah, you break through all the boundaries. And that's why you draw down this additional energy. Without mitzvahs, you could argue, yeah, of course there's no schar mitzvah in this world because you haven't done mitzvahs, so you're not drawing down extra energy. Then you just have the energy that's in existence by definition, by its wiring. God created a world, so each world has its role to play. Mitzvahs bring in a surge of energy from the highest, deepest levels that transcend these distinctions. So that makes the question stronger, like he says, Im Kain, Eich Amru, that there's no schar mitzvah in this world. And then finally, the question about Elu Dvarim, Shadam Eichel Perasem. Why are there certain mitzvahs spelled out that we say we eat from their fruit? Why are we making distinctions between mitzvahs when all the mitzvahs are all drawing down divine energy? So in order to explain this, he said, in order to understand, we need to first preface and understand the way the hamshacha, how mitzvahs actually generate this energy. We know it generates the energy, but in what fashion does it work? So he said that in the drawing down of pnimius ha'er, even though it's true that you're reaching a place that equalizes and goes beyond its structures, but still, the very hamshach of pnimius ha'er also, and it travels from the agam shenim b'chol mokim, bli chalkus ma'ilo mata. I'm reading inside that even though it transmits and is everywhere without the distinctions between higher and lower, like we said earlier, and the atzmi is everywhere, nimshach b'chol mokim, b'chol mokim. Nevertheless, in this very transmission, there is a different levels of how much it's revealed or concealed. And the parenthesis says, we're not talking about the concealment that the divine energy is concealed from each world in order to allow that structure of that world to be. The difference between a living room and a dining room, for example, or the difference between Atzilus, Bria, Tzir, and Asiya. Here we're talking about not that it's just not manifest completely, but the hamshach is there, like I elaborated yesterday. The mitzvahs have done something. It's just in the revelation of what they achieve. There can be a difference between something that's more and something less. And in order to explain that, he said the inyan is like we learned earlier about Shem Ma'achodosh Hayetzem Mitzcha Da'ak. The example, as I elaborated, that there's a hamshacha atzmis. That's not hamshacha from his pashtus. When a teacher, for example, teaches Torah, that's more chetzenius ha'er. It could be very deep ideas, but the teacher is not conveying an atzmi. When a parent gives birth to a child, that's atzmi. We learned earlier this, that a parent to a child is not hamshach of er, it's hamshach of Etzem. because the child has the very genetic material and is made up of the same and the DNA from their parent. Like he says in Tanya, Etzem moyecha'av, a child comes from the very genetic matter of the father. A student has a mind and of his own, has his own being of his own. He gets hamshachi, he gets oyer. So atzmi has its own way of transmitting, and he says that it's in a form of bikia. And etzem doesn't flow in a regular way because the etzem is not about flow. The idea of a flow from one place, like I said, you take wine and you pour it into pitchers, and pitchers into smaller pitchers, into cups. That's the flow of the kav, so to speak, the regular flow. Now, eratzmi is bededer bikia. Shazam shachas eratzmi dafke. It bursts forth. That the etzem is so powerful that there's a burst. But as he said, since it comes like a burst from an atzmistic place, it's not a fully revealed state. It's more like that type of, like a burst. Like he said, like pierces through. Like we see the forehead of a wise person that shines. You can't say that you understand an idea when you see the glow of Moshe Rabbeinu or the glow of a master, of a person with Chachmas Adam Teir Panov, but you do see something. You can't say it's completely not revealed. So the revelation is one that you call it, it's a concealed revelation type of thing. Because the revelation shows you it's coming from something very deep, but you can't quite quantify it in the regular flow and structure of things. So that's an atzmi. I'm continuing to read. Yesh chiluki madreges b'shem ma. So what do we see from this? That even though it's an atzmi, and there's no milo mata, because it's a level that really permeates everywhere. Everybody can experience it, but still there's different levels of how it expresses itself. Mashem ma avatzilus, v'shem ma debriya. V'gam b'chinas shem ma debriya also is an atzmi. They all have this atzmistic element to it. And that's where we stopped. So I'm going to now continue reading 5 lines from the bottom of the paragraph on page 1272. So he's introducing now how mitzvahs affect Etzem, but the Etzem itself, as it manifests, can be distinctions. So we need more explanation, but we at least understand the difference between distinctions of a structure are different than the distinctions of the asmis de kamshachet. Because now you are drawing from a very deep place. However, its manifestation can be more concealed. And he's giving the example of the bikia, the burst that comes from an etzem. So the example would be a teacher teaching ideas to students. So obviously each student is going to receive what they're able to understand. That's not atzmi. That's the oyer. This student is more advanced. This is intermediate. This is a beginner student. So each one gets according to what he needs. And that's that. That's the flow of oyer. What about they all see the teacher's face now glowing? This is an equalizer. They're all equally distant from the glow, meaning the glow, or I should say the other way around, the glow is accessible to all of them. They all see the face glowing. So the atzmi of the teacher is now expressing itself. Or they see the teacher dancing on Simchas Torah. So they all see something that is coming not just from in the usual flow of intelligence. There's a very clear distinction between an advanced student and another level student and other level students. Now they're all experiencing the etzem of the teacher, but that too has different elements of expression. How much it's revealed or not, because even though it's an atzmi and it's an equalizer, and yet he says there's the language. His galus v'salma sha'ir. There's also levels of how it's expressed, but this is not the expression of the seichel of the teacher. This is an expression of the etzem. There too, you can have the difference between how the etzem is seen in bria, in yetzira, and asiya. So even the 3 students I just mentioned, or the different levels, even though they all see, they're all experiencing the etzem of the teacher, you can also say there's a distinction of how they experience it. Again, not because of the intelligence, but it's because each one is on a different level of how they experience the atzmi. That's what he's saying here. But I'm sure this is going to be explained further more at length. So now he says the following. Ulechein, harihu oises habirur gam b'chol hadvarim hagashmi. Since mitzvahs, and let me step back a minute. Remember, before mitzvahs, we have a world, and we have Gan Eden. They're there. God planted Gan Eden. It's a higher level of Havaya Elokim, like we learned, than it is like the Zion, the Gimel Rishenus. So in Gan Eden, you have more of a taste of the artist, the personality of the artist, or the personality of God. In the rest of the world, you have more his expression. You see the art, not so much the artist. Fine. Now mitzvahs change the whole equation. Now that Adam and Chava, they're placed in Gan Eden, la'avda l'shamra, to serve and protect, that they do now mitzvahs, or in the case of all the shamas that come to this world, they do mitzvahs. Mitzvahs now, you know what the mitzvahs does? It is drawing down the Etzem of the artist. The Etzem. The art is the creation of the world. The understanding of the personality of the artist is Gan Eden on its own. But a mitzvah now goes into the real inner, in the Pnimius Ha'or. What is the intention of the artist in the first place? Why did he create this world? Why did he create this art? A mitzvah fulfills it. In the example of the artist, it's not a really perfect example because the artist doesn't expect us to do mitzvahs. An artist creates art, and then we could try to study the art and try to understand the art, and then try to understand the artist, and try to reach higher levels in the artist till the point even that he's beyond being an artist. But in the cosmic artist, the Eibishter wants something from us. He created art, and he wants the creations in this art should do something. What is it? He wants our mitzvahs. So mitzvahs connect all the way to the etzem of what the artist, why did he create this art in the first place? Bereshis, b'shvil ha'teira, b'shvil Yisrael. He created the art, so we should do mitzvahs. So mitzvahs reaches all the way into the core heart and soul of the artist, and even higher than being an artist. That's the Pnimius Ha'or. And that's why mitzvahs, because they do that, oises habirur, that's why they cause that. Birur is the separation, the clarification, the refinement of what? Only mitzvahs have the power to refine and transform all physical matter. And all physical matter, not one more than the other. When it comes to, let's say, learning Torah, you could say Torah depends on what level you're on. But mitzvahs, everybody who does a mitzvah is transforming this physical world equally. Rak hachiluku bizgalus ha'atzmi. The difference is how much of the atzmi, of the core of the artist or the creator, is being revealed. They all are revealing atzmi. The question is how much. The Batzilus will be gili. In Atzilus it's revealed. Ubabiyah ha'atzmi masala. In Biyah, the atzmi is concealed. But this is not the concealment of creating the art that creates the hierarchy and the distinctions of existence. This is a concealment of how much the atzmi, or the atzmi that has come from mitzvahs, is manifesting. So it manifests everywhere. The question is it more revealed or not revealed? So it's a different definition of revealed and concealed right now than the definition of revealed and concealed when we spoke about the actual structure of existence. Now, though I just made the distinction between Torah and mitzvahs, he now says the chenu b'Torah, as it is with mitzvahs, there's also etzem Torah. Shehi hamshachas atzmi. So there's Torah, there's the understanding of Torah. That's where there's a difference. But the Torah is also drawing down the atzmi of shanimshach ad lamata mata. The Torah comes all the way down below in this world. Matan Torah brought the Torah all the way to this world. U'kamoshon is bar le'il, as was explained earlier, the Maimer Vayetzi Yaakov, which is back in volume 2. Down below, they suggest maybe it's a different Maimer. So even though the Torah also carries the atzmi of God's desire and will and wisdom, nevertheless, even though Torah carries that etzem, it also there's the Torah of Atzilus and the Torah of Bria. Shagam Torah Sabri Hamshacha Atzmis, Rak She'enim Izgala Kol Kach. Also, the Torah in the world of Bria is also a core transmission of God's very desire and wisdom. It's not just the art, the creation, Except in Bria, it's not revealed as much. Now, this is not over. The next paragraph is going to explain this. But what he's so far introduced, and he said it was an introduction, that in order to understand the questions he's asking about, why is there reward in this world? Are there levels of different mitzvahs? And so on, we'll understand by understanding that even that the Eifan Hamshacha, what he calls Eifan Hamshacha Shaidei mitzvahs, the way we draw down the Atzmi. So to give another example, I mentioned parent and child. There's a ava atzmis, a core love between a parent and a child. That love can be very concealed. You cannot be thinking about it, but it's there. It's always there. So a parent and a child can have a relationship and they're not focusing on the etzem. But then there's a moment where the parent and the child both feel that connection. Either they miss each other or something just awakens. Now, that atzmistic connection is with all your children. Nevertheless, it's a complete, so on one hand, there's an equalizer, all children have that connection. And yet there still can be levels, not because of the levels of like in Giluyim of that one child is, let's say, more, the parent identifies more with his child, or something like that, or the child is giving the parent more nachas. The atzmi is all the children are connected, but still in atzmi itself, you can have more manifest and less manifest. So basically, he's introduced another track that mitzvahs connect to the etzem, and the etzem itself can have levels of how it's expressed. I think a lot more of this will be understood as we learn on. But I just wanted to make clear that's this distinction. So I'll stop here if anybody wants to ask anything. And if not, I'll continue on the next paragraph. Any questions? Okay. So now let's continue. The inyan of this is is like it's written in Ageres HaKedesh, the fourth part of Tanya. Well, actually the fifth part, because Ageres HaKedesh includes Ageres HaKedesh and Kuntres Achren. So there, it's not structured by numbers, it's structured by titles. It's titled, that section in Tanya is titled, Ageres HaKedesh, Dibra HaMaschel. Dibra HaMaschel means the headline, the dibur, the expression that how that section begins. Lahavin Mashakaser B'Pri Eitz Chaim. That's how it begins, to understand what it says in Pri Eitz Chaim. I just want to bring a Tanya here because I see he's going to quote it. I want to make sure I see the entire quote. 1 second. Okay. So, Lahavini Mashakaser Pri Eitz Chaim. The Inyan Milas HaTeira Al Ava V'Yira. So he's going to quote a Tanya now that talks about the quality of Torah over what? Love and reverence. Ava and Yira. So I'm just opening it up. Just give me a moment. As you know, Tanya is made up of 5 parts. There's L'Kutei Amorim, the 53 chapters of the first. There's Shari Yichud V'Amuna, that talks about Yichud and that God sustaining all of existence. There's Ageres HaTshuva. It's all about Tshuva. There's Ageres HaKodesh, means the letter, the holy letter. These are letters of the Alter Rebbe wrote to different individuals or communities. And then there's Kuntres Achren, means the last manuscript. It's an addition that they added. It's also letters, but they call it Kuntres Achren. So sometimes Ageres HaKodesh includes Ageres HaKodesh and Kuntres Achren. So L'Havin Mashakaser B'Pri Eitz Chaim. I think it's a very long one. I just want to find it. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So he talks there about the quality of Torah over Ava V'Yira. Zel Shene. This is what he writes. Zel Shene means he's actually citing actual language. So I just want to find it inside. 1 second. He called Chil v'Rechim Sichlim. Where is that? I thought it was here. Let me see. Okay. If you want to follow along, it's on page 1 in Tanya, page Kufnun Ches Aleph, 158a. So he says like this. He called Chil v'Rechim Sichlim. We may remember we talked about Chil v'Rechim means in Aramaic or reverence and love. Chilu is yira and Rechimu is ava. She says all reverence and love sichlim. There's Chilu Rechimu tivim, which is naturally wired within us. It's our nature. Chilu Rechimu sichlim is a reverence and a love that comes through contemplation. She says, "Kol Chilu Rechimu sichlim shel hamalachim." All this reverence and love of the angels, we call cognitive reverence and love of the angels, hein b'chinas nevroim ma'ayin liyesh, v'hein b'chinas nefesh ruach debiyah. They are nevroim, created from yayin to yesh, and they are the level of nefesh and ruach of biyah. That's the angels. The angels have this cognitive reverence and love of God. Aval prote halachois, which is not love and reverence and love. This is the actual detailed Torah, the specific halachois in Torah. Hein hamshoches chochmei lo, the hamaitzel baruch hu. They are a transmission of the supernal wisdom of the emanator. Hamelubeshes begashmis, which manifest in a physical way. So let's say we learn the halacha of shnaim she'echzim betalis. Two people are holding on to a talis. Or you're learning about the 39 malachas, 39 different types of work on Shabbos. All these things are halachas that are manifest in Gashmis, but their root is higher than the root of the reverence and love of angels, cognitive level of love, because it's rooted in chochmei love, the maitzel amelubeshes begashmis. Then he continues. This is all the language of Tanya. V'halbosha zu eina kal boshas chochmei love b'tchila rechim sichlim. This manifestation is not the same as that same chokhmah as it manifests in the reverence and awe, the cognitive reverence and awe, the hosam halavush mailim u'masta legamri. Because there, by the angels, the reverence and the cognitive reverence and love of the angels, there, the garment completely conceals the chokhmah. Mashenken, and then he skips a bunch of lines from the Tanya. Mashenken ha'alochis, by contrast, the laws in the Torah, harichochmei law me'ira behem begili. The supernal wisdom of God radiates there in a revealed way. V'levusha asiyah hu derech ma'ivir levad. and the garment of Asiya, it's only passing through. In other words, you can dress up in a garment and the garment conceals what's behind the garment, what's within the garment, or it's there revealed, and the fact that it's going through a certain world, it's only passing through. It doesn't assume the properties of that which it's passing through. The difference between maiver and islapshus is like, for example, a funnel. If you funnel, let's say, wine from a barrel into a cup, it doesn't change the wine, it just channels it. That's called passing through, but you need it to channel it. If, for example, it's going through a distiller, that can distill the wine, then it changes the wine. It adds something to it or subtracts something from it. So in Chassidus, there's a difference in maiver and islapshus. There's two ways that something travels. One is it's just passing through and does not assume the properties of the thing it's passing through. Another is that it's a real levush and it does assume the properties. So we say, for example, a neshama batzilus comes to this world, like Moshe Rabbeinu, it only passes through Bri Yitzir Asiya. The rest of the neshamas also originate in Atzilus, but they assume the properties and the identity of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. So he says basically that the Chachmei and Chile Rechimu Sichlim, there the garment conceals and changes it, so to speak. But in Halachois, you have the Chachmei as is, and the garment is only passing through. Just want to see if he says anything more. That's relevant here. 1 second. I think that's it from the Tanya. I'm going to look at the Tanya more because I think there's more relevant to here. But let's continue reading from what he says here. Now, all this is coming to explain, remember, the difference between how mitzvahs work and how the regular structure of existence works. So let's continue. So he now asks a question. The Rebbe Rashab asks, now that we just read the Tanya, what do we say? That there's a difference between how the very profound emotions of the angels, though they're called cognitive emotions, but they conceal the pure wisdom of God. Halacha manifests the pure wisdom of God. So if you were to look at an angel that's burning up in passion and love and awe of God, that's beautiful. But when you learn halacha down here on earth, you're actually learning the very mind of the core mind of the Mitzvos, of the emanator of God. So it's higher. Now, Chachmei Lo exists. Let's use the example I mentioned before about art. You look at the art, and you're mesmerized and enthralled by it to the point that you get excited. You have love and reverence for the artists that created such beautiful art. That's angels. Angels are aware and cognizant of the divine glory within everything. Neshamas begufim, meaning souls in this world, are not cognizant on their own. They need avodah to get there. So you could say, okay, so our work is to look at these angels and try to emulate them. Let's try from the art. Let's contemplate on astronomy, on science, on physics. Look at the world and see the beautiful, exquisite poetry and music and art that God created. But the Eibishter gave us another tool. He says, I'm going to give you something better. I want you to have that passion. That's the kavanah of Ru'usa Deliba, that creates and generates the energy in Gan Eden. But I'm going to give you something deeper. I want to give you myself, the artist himself, not the art. I'm going to give you the mitzvos that the reason I created all this art in the first place. Do these mitzvos, which learn the Torah and the Halachois of Torah, and you're bypassing and you're connecting to me in my core essence, what I really want. So though the passion and the fervor and the reverence and the love of the angels is also celebrating God, but it's celebrating God as he manifests in existence. It's like saying, God built a beautiful home, and you're marveling at what kind of home it is. Torah and mitzvahs, on the other hand, cause you to connect to the one who created the home in the first place and the purpose he created it. So the halachas go straight to the very chachman. When the Eibishter says that I want you to eat a kazayas matzah, or I want you to bring this and this offering, or to give tzedakah, or to put on tefillin, this is far more than just the God's splendor and beauty in the world that the angels experience, which also has God's wisdom in it. But the wisdom is more concealed in the creation, in the art. Now you're connecting more to the very essence of what the artist wants. So the king can create a beautiful tapestry. Everyone marvels at it. But the mitzvah is what the king actually wants. So when you do a mitzvah, you're connecting, like he says, the halachas connect straight to chachmei law without the gilui, and the levush is only maiver. Meaning, yes, the world has all this beauty and all that, but that's just passing through. You're connecting to the Etzem that created the whole thing in the first place. Now we need both. Remember, at the end of the day, we want to both connect to the Etzem, but it should also be revealed in a way that we get excited about it. That's why you need angels, and that's why you need Gan Eden, as we're going to learn. But the mitzvahs introduce the Etzem. Had God not given us mitzvahs, then we would be like other creations, and we grow through our meditation and contemplation on the beauty of the universe, and we come to a love and a reverence of God and all of that. The mitzvahs connect to the halachas connect to the Etzem. So now he says like this: well, the chayre ain't a moving. Seemingly, it's not understood what we just learned. Why? Halacha also, when you look at it, it's true that the halacha, let's say, of doing a mitzvah, a specific detail, has within it wisdom, but the wisdom also manifested and dressed itself up. You don't see chachmei law, you just know it's there. It also manifests in slapshus, like he says here. In the Bechinis Malchus of Bria and Yetzirah, like the Alter Rebbe himself writes that with that later in the Kuntus Achim. The Rak Levush Asiyah, only the garment of Asiyah is Bederech Bechinis Maiver, passes through. But Yetzirah and Bria, it's not passing through. It actually manifests in them. It's full, it's dressed up. It's not passing through all the levels. Malchus of Asiyah, it passes through, as he says. Bim Kain, and if that's the case, we're back to square one. Ma'wa Hefresh, what is the difference between Islapshus Chachmei Law, Ba'halachas? What is the difference in the wisdom of God as it manifests in the laws of Torah? Ba'halachas, Lislabish Chachmei Law, B'tchila v'rechim sichlim Shalom Alachim. And the wisdom that is manifest and dresses up in the reverence, in the cognitive reverence and love of the angels, shehem be'elam habriya, which is in the world of Bria, b'sefer Shabbein and Perik Lametes ba'agah. Like he says in Tanya chapter 39 in the gloss there, in Agah. So we have a question. You made a distinction that the Malachim, it's more manifest in the art, so to speak, but in halachas also, it's also manifest in a way that it gets shaped by Bria Yetzirah. It's not purely Chachmei Law. When you learn halacha, you know it's God's wisdom, but you don't experience it. So what is the distinction? So he says, so he answers the question like this. And let me stop. Anyone want to, is everything clear? You want me to clarify anything? So Achi Yedua Inyan Bezeh. However, it's known that the inyan, what's the explanation? That's why I wanted to look in the Geras case. I think I think he explains it in more detail, but the Rebbe Rashab is going to sum it up. The B'chinas Malchus, the Bria v'Yetzirah, shebehem islabish B'chinas Chachmei Lo the Halachas, that the Malchus of Bria and Yetzirah, where the Halachas manifest in a mislabish, they enclose there. Hainu B'chinas Neshama the Malchus the Bria v'Yetzirah. That means is the level of the soul of Malchus of Bria Yetzirah. V'yedur the Eira Neshama hu B'chinas Alakus Mamish. Okay, so he's now introducing that as the neshama, the air of the neshama of Malchus, of Bria Yetzirah, and it's known that the light of the soul is Elikus Mamish. It's actually divine. Let's just read it, then I'll explain. Valkain, and therefore, and that's why the supernal wisdom that manifests in it, does not get concealed and covered up from these levels, these lower levels. Adarabba, in the light of the neshama of Bria is understood the personality of Chachmei Law that manifests in it. This is the true manifestation and clothing of the higher structures. The kasher parts of Elim mislabish, but parts of Tachten, that when a higher structure gets enclosed in a lower one, in a lower structure, harimusig muhusei but parts of Tachten. The personality of the higher one is understood. Its very personality is understood in the lower structure. I will explain it. I just want to read it inside, and then we'll explain. The mishumzeh passive atachten hu mamayla el yenu yeser, and that's why the lower structure is in a higher quality. From the way it was before, that higher structure manifested in it. Okay, I see this is going to need a lot of explanation. So let me just say this before we continue on. The Rebbe Rashab it's very dense, and we need to rely on things we learned earlier in Ayin Beis and another Maimarim. So he's basically going into an in-depth discussion of how godliness manifests throughout existence, and wants to demonstrate that there's two tracks that we've been talking about. There's the Chetzeni Se'er, and let's call it the Pnimi Se'er. For example, there's an expression, they say there are people who know the value of, they know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. You can be an expert on a beautiful piece of art, literally a tremendous expert. You can be an expert. You can be an expert on a building, a structure, on a piece of literature. But you know what? You can be clueless about the artist and about the author or about the architect. This is very common because you're a master, like scientists. There are scientists that are brilliant in understanding the physics and the anatomy of the universe, but they know very little about the one who created the universe. And there are those that know about the creator and don't know about the science of the structure. The truth is you want both, obviously. So I'm just using this example. I think it'll be very helpful here because he's using a lot of Kabbalistic and foreign ideas that if you're not familiar with them, it's hard to fully understand. What he's coming to say here is that the Malachim, when Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai, the Malachim said to Hashem, why are you giving the lowly, inferior human being the Torah? Give it to us. This is your Chem de Gnuza, it's your precious treasure. We will appreciate it. And ultimately Hashem tells to Moshe, explain to them why it belongs on earth, not in heaven. The bottom line explanation is this, that Giluyim, the angels are right in the world of Giluyim. If you want to have a master of the art, of the beauty and grandeur of existence, Malachim are the ones to go to. But if you want someone who knows the artist, and what he really wants is Kavana Pnimis, his Pnimi, there you have to go to neshamas that do mitzvahs in this world. Because the Atzmus, Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu, he wants a home not in the higher worlds. It's like the mashal of the Baal Shem Tov, where the person who, the intelligent, literate one, missed his appointment with God, the king, because he got so caught up with the beauty and grandeur of the universe. And the simple simpleton, the simple pauper, went straight to the king. So sometimes being caught up and knowing all the art can sometimes be a distraction. But here the point is that you don't have the Etzem. He's trying to come to now understand, how do we have Chachmei Law and Halacha more than the angels have it through their praises and through their reverence and love. So he's coming to explain, because we have also a neshama, the inner spirit of it all. So this next section is going to explain the distinction between the two. I'm going to stop here because it needs more explanation, but this is giving some framework, some understanding of what he's explaining here. He's speaking in language of malachim and halachas, but that's essentially what he's saying here. So it's a really very powerful concept. And we're going to get back to Etzem and Giluyim here. That's basically what it comes down to. Where the mitzvahs touch the Etzem, the Kavana and Avaraba, B'tainugim, and Mesir Service, B'chol Meidecha, a Simcha Shal Mitzvah is all the Giluyim of it all, an expansion of those Giluyim. So that's where I'm going to stop here, close to the bottom of page 1272. Okay. I'll take a question or two, but I do have to go because I have something urgent that I must do. Anyone want to ask anything?